Welcome to my channel. I'm Ben. Today, we step into America's darkest corridors. 5 unsolved murders that refuse to close. Cases where answers stay just out of reach and silence feels heavier than truth. Listen for a moment. A clock ticks in a quiet evidence room. A brown envelope, edges soft from too many hands, releases the smell of old paper and rain. A photograph curls. A name is redacted to ink. Somewhere, a witness's memory flickers and dims, and with it, the last warm light on a face the world forgot. These are not legends. They are scars. A body left with surgical precision beneath a winter sky. Letters that mocked the police. Each symbol a blade pressed to civic pride. A child found in a place that should have been safe. Pill bottles purchased in good faith, transformed into instruments of murder. A small shop, flames licking at a roof while the truth collapses inside. Different years, different cities, the same ache. Who did this and why? We are not here to sensationalize. We are here to examine the timelines, the physical traces, the choices investigators made, and the choices they could not make, where witnesses faltered, where forensics advanced and still stopped short, where the public's attention distorted what the evidence tried to say. We will separate noise from signal, rumor from record, and ask what remains when everything unproven is set aside. Across decades, science has changed. Cold storage preserved fibers that once would have vanished. DNA grew sharper, databases wider, cameras everywhere, and yet some files still hum with unfinished electricity. Perhaps the offender blended into the crowd. Perhaps the design was elegant enough to survive time. Or perhaps the answer is present, ordinary, hiding in plain sight, waiting for one connection we have not made. So take a breath. Keep your mind open. Walk with me through 5 American mysteries and listen for the pattern beneath the static. Because if there is one thread binding these cases, one signature that persists across distance and years, finding it may not only tell us who, but reveal why the darkness chose them and why it still chooses us. The Zodiac Killer. The name alone carries the weight of a myth, though the blood he spilled was all too real. Between 1968 and 1969, Northern California lived under his shadow. 5 murders confirmed, but perhaps many more claimed. Couples parked in lovers' lanes. A cab driver on his late shift targets, chosen without clear logic. Left with wounds that spoke of obsession rather than opportunity. Yet it wasn't the killings alone that made him infamous. It was the voice he forced into the world. He wrote letters, not just letters, but puzzle ciphers that mocked police, taunted newspapers, and invited the public into his cruelty. He demanded headlines. He threatened more deaths if denied. Each envelope carried the weight of a dare. Inside, symbols arranged like a secret map, offering clues or distractions. No one could be sure. Some messages were solved, revealing chilling statements. I like killing people because it is so much fun. Others remain unbroken, walls of code that continue to defy experts. Investigators chased leads across counties. Dozens of suspects emerged, men who fit fragments of the puzzle but never the whole. Arthur Lee Allen, a school teacher, came closest, his life tangled with circumstantial evidence. A watch with the Zodiac logo, disturbing journals, neighbors' suspicions. Yet DNA and fingerprints failed to tie him to the crimes. He died in 1992, never charged. Others followed, from journalists to ex-convicts, but every time, certainty slipped away. The cultural impact was immediate. Newspapers printed his words, fearing more blood If they refused, citizens lived in fear, checking locks, avoiding remote roads. Hollywood transformed his shadow into cinema. Documentaries multiplied. Each generation of amateur sleuths swore they were closer to truth, yet the case grew only more labyrinthine. Even the FBI, with modern forensics, has never confirmed his identity. In 2021, a team of independent investigators claimed to have solved it, naming Gary Francis Post as Zodiac. But the evidence remains contested, circumstantial at best. Law enforcement never accepted it as definitive. The Zodiac's true identity is still hidden, buried beneath ink and decades. His voice, though, lingers. The letters remain preserved. The ciphers still waiting, daring someone to finish the game he began, and perhaps that is his final cruelty. Not the lives he took, but the questions he left behind. Questions sharp enough to wound every new mind that touches them. But if California's terror once wrote in symbols, Los Angeles bore a different scar. A woman whose silence became louder than any cipher, whose death in 1947 still shatters every attempt at closure. Los Angeles, January of 1947. A vacant lot near South Norton Avenue. Early morning light revealed what passersby first mistook for a mannequin, pale, rigid, arranged. It was not plastic. It was flesh. 22-year-old Elizabeth Short lay severed in two at the waist. Her body drained of blood, posed with eerie deliberation. Her face carried a Glasgow smile. Lips cut ear to ear. Reporters swarmed. Police scrambled. A city braced itself for spectacle. Elizabeth Short, nicknamed the Black Dahlia for her jet black hair and rumored preference for dark clothing, had come to Los Angeles chasing stardom. Friends described her as warm yet restless, drawn into the orbit of nightclubs. Servicemen, hopeful actors. She lived transiently, drifting between acquaintances, often penniless but determined. That life of half-dreams became fuel for tabloids once her body was found. Every headline magnified the tragedy. Every rumor painted her in harsher tones. The investigation quickly grew chaotic. The crime scene was trampled by curious onlookers. Evidence was mishandled. Leads poured in. From Hollywood producers to drifters, the brutality suggested knowledge of anatomy. Some suspected a doctor, perhaps a surgeon with dark urges. Others saw ritual in the posing of her remains, as if the killer wanted an audience long after leaving the field. More than 150 suspects were questioned. Some even confessed, craving attention. None held against scrutiny. The press deepened the mystery. Photographs of Short, cropped and dramatized, portrayed her alternately as a victim and as a femme fatale. The LAPD battled leaks and false leads. Letters, allegedly from the killer, arrived with cutout words and personal items of Short, but handwriting analysis and fingerprints proved inconclusive. Each week brought a new suspect, a new theory. Each collapsed under weight of doubt. Decades later, the case remains open. Books, films, podcasts, documentaries. The Black Dahlia murder has become myth as much as memory. Some believe George Hodel, a wealthy physician, orchestrated the killing. His son, former detective Steve Hodel, has written extensively on the claim. Others point elsewhere, convinced the truth lies in LAPD archives or lost testimonies. But no indictment ever came. Elizabeth Short's death endures as one of the most gruesome and famous unsolved cases in America. It was not only her life cut short, but the trust of a city, the faith in law enforcement's ability to bring justice. And as Los Angeles still whispers her name, another community miles away, decades later, would shudder under fear, not from a knife, but from pills trusted to heal. Chicago, September of 1982. The city was already restless with the end of summer. But what followed would twist daily life into panic. In the suburbs, ordinary families reached for ordinary relief. Tylenol, America's most trusted painkiller. Within hours, 7 people were dead. The capsules they swallowed had been laced with potassium cyanide, a poison that works fast, shutting down the body with merciless precision. The victims were unconnected. A 12-year-old girl fighting a cold, a young postal worker, a new mother returning from the hospital with her newborn. Each collapsed suddenly, their last moments violent and unexplained. Emergency rooms scrambled, doctors puzzled until a pattern surfaced. Every one of them had taken extra-strength Tylenol. Panic swept Chicago. Supermarket shelves were cleared. Police cars broadcast warnings through megaphones. Parents checked cabinets in terror. The nation watched as trust in a household brand dissolved overnight. The FBI and local authorities joined forces. Investigators traced the poisoned bottles back to manufacturing plants, then forward through distribution chains. No contamination was found at the source. That meant one thing: someone had tampered with bottles already on store shelves. A letter soon arrived. It demanded $1 million to stop the killing. James Lewis, a man with a history of fraud, was arrested for sending it. He was convicted of extortion, but authorities could never place him near the poisoned bottles. He served more than a decade in prison, but he was never charged with murder. To this day, many doubt he was the true killer. The impact was seismic. Tylenol's market share collapsed. Johnson & Johnson, the parent company, pulled 31 million bottles from shelves, a recall that cost more than $100 million. Out of tragedy came reform. Tamper-evident seals, child-proof caps, packaging designed to break if altered. The way America buys medicine was forever changed. Yet the core question, who opened those bottles, added poison, and set them back among the pain relief aisles, was never answered. Each year, cold case detectives revisit the files. Each year, families of victims plead for closure. Technology has advanced, but no DNA, no fingerprint, no witness has ever closed the gap. Chicago remembers. Parents still warn children about taking medicine that looks wrong, and the bottles sit in evidence lockers, mute and menacing. The killer's logic remains invisible. Was it revenge against the company? A random act of cruelty? Or the perfect crime, designed to vanish into the anonymity of commerce? The Tylenol murders proved that terror does not always come from shadows and alleys. Sometimes it hides inside the ordinary, waiting in the palm of your hand. And as investigators struggled with that reality, another family in Colorado would soon discover that horror could arrive not from strangers on the street, but from within the walls of their own home. Boulder, Colorado, December 26, 1996. Christmas lights still glowed on houses dusted with snow when the call came in. Patsy Ramsey, and frantic, reported her 6-year-old daughter missing. A ransom note lay on the staircase, demanding precisely $118,000, the same amount her husband John had received as a bonus that year. Police arrived. The home felt tense, cluttered, oddly quiet. Hours later, the silence broke with discovery. In the basement, behind a locked door, lay JonBenet. She was found on the concrete floor, wrapped in a white blanket, her wrists bound, tape across her mouth. a garrote fashioned from a paintbrush handle tightened around her neck. The autopsy revealed skull fracture and strangulation. The scene suggested kidnapping turned murder, but the setting, her own house, deepened confusion. JonBenet was more than a child. She was a small-town celebrity, a beauty pageant contestant with dazzling costumes and polished routines. Photographs of her in makeup and sequined gowns saturated television coverage, sparking debate about childhood, ambition, and exploitation. Her death ignited national obsession. The investigation faltered from the start. Police allowed friends and family to wander through the house, contaminating the scene. The ransom note, 3 pages long, appeared oddly detailed and theatrical. Experts debated whether it was written by Patsy. Suspicion fell heavily on the Ramseys themselves, amplified by tabloid frenzy. For years, the family lived under a cloud of suspicion, though no charges stuck. In 2008, after new DNA testing excluded them, the Boulder District Attorney formally apologized and cleared them. Yet, exoneration did not bring resolution. Unknown male DNA was found on JonBenet's clothing, but it matched no one in national databases. Theories multiplied. An intruder slipping in through a basement window, a neighbor obsessed, a drifter passing through. Others insisted the crime was staged within the home. Every hypothesis carried flaws. Every lead led nowhere. Public fascination never dimmed. Documentaries, books, even reenactments revisited the case. Investigators tried fresh technologies, touch DNA, familial searching. Still, no arrest. JonBenet's smiling face, preserved in photographs, became a haunting emblem of innocence lost. The little girl whose case defined the limits of American justice. The tragedy remains open, both legally and emotionally. Each anniversary renews calls for answers. Detectives insist progress is being made, yet the killer's name stays hidden. And while Colorado wrestled with unanswered questions, Texas would soon confront its own nightmare. One not of ransom notes and suburban basements, but of 4 teenage girls trapped in the flames of a yogurt shop. Their final moments marked by violence no community could forget. Austin, Texas, December 6th. 1991, a Friday night at a small shop called I Can't Believe It's Yogurt. The doors closed late. Neon lights dimmed. 4 teenage girls remained inside: Jennifer, Sarah, Amy, and Eliza. Sometime after closing, horror arrived. By dawn, firefighters responded to flames consuming the building. Inside, they found the bodies, bound with their own clothing, shot in the head, at least one assaulted. The shop was set ablaze, an attempt to erase both evidence and memory. The crime stunned Austin. 4 young lives, ages 13 to 17, ended with cold precision. The city mourned, leaving flowers and candles outside the scorched storefront. But grief quickly shifted to fear. If killers could target a yogurt shop, no place was safe. Investigators faced a nightmare. The fire destroyed critical traces, yet shell casings revealed 2 different guns, suggesting more than one perpetrator. Rumors spread. Gang initiation, robbery gone wrong, sadistic thrill. Families pressed for answers. The media circled, amplifying the tragedy into a national story. In the years that followed, suspects came and went. 4 young men, Maurice Pierce, Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, and Forrest Wellborn, were questioned. Scott and Springsteen confessed under intense interrogation, providing accounts riddled with inconsistencies. They were convicted, yet appeals exposed flaws, coerced confessions, lack of physical evidence, unreliable witnesses. DNA testing later excluded them. Their convictions were overturned. Pierce was eventually killed in a traffic stop. The others were released. Still, the case refused closure. Cold case detectives revisited it repeatedly. New DNA evidence belonging to an unidentified male was retrieved from the crime scene, but no match emerged in national databases. Leads ran dry. The yogurt shop stood demolished, replaced by a bank, but the ground itself seemed haunted. Every anniversary, vigils reignited memory. Parents speaking of their daughters, as if time could not dilute the pain. The cultural wound persisted. For Austin, a city often portrayed as vibrant and safe, the murders shattered innocence. Generations grew up hearing warnings, their childhoods shadowed by the crime. True crime programs dissected it endlessly, each documentary reopening scars. Investigators remain convinced that answers still exist somewhere in suppressed memories, forgotten tips, or future DNA breakthroughs. The yogurt shop killings embody the cruelty of chance. Ordinary girls on an ordinary night, swallowed by extraordinary evil. And with each passing year, the absence of justice feels heavier. 5 cases, 5 American tragedies, unresolved. From ciphers on newsprint to mutilation in Los Angeles. From poison pills to a child in her basement. From 4 teens silenced in flames. Each story leaves threads hanging. Each one questions the limits of law, science, and society's memory. But how do we measure these unsolved crimes? By brutality, by fear they spread, or by the way they forever altered the lives of families and communities? That is the challenge we face next. When confronted with crimes that remain unsolved, how do we weigh them? The list you have just heard is not about ranking evil for spectacle. It is about understanding why certain cases continue to resonate and why their echoes endure decades later. The criteria here rest on 3 pillars. First, the severity of the act itself. Murders so brutal, so calculated. They carved permanent scars into the communities they touched. Second, in the public impact, the way each tragedy spread fear beyond immediate victims, altering habits, shifting trust, sometimes reshaping the very laws that governed daily life. Third, the enduring mystery, the gaps in evidence, the contradictions in testimony, the shadows that resist illumination despite the best efforts of science and law enforcement. The Zodiac exposed the terror of a killer who controlled narrative as much as lives. The Black Dahlia revealed the vulnerability of ambition, twisted into a tableau that haunts Los Angeles still. The Tylenol murders forced America to reconsider the safety of every product on every shelf. The JonBenet case blurred the line between private grief and public consumption, while the Austin yogurt shop killings showed how communal spaces could be violated with unspeakable cruelty. Together, these criteria reveal not just why these cases remain unforgettable, but why they matter. They highlight the limits of justice and the fragility of trust, and they pose a deeper question: whether solving them would truly close the wound, or only remind us how long we have lived with it open. But before we can decide, we must face what comes when all 5 are viewed as a whole, a reflection not of isolated crimes, but of America itself. 5 Unsolved Murders. 5 echoes that refuse to fade. Each case is a mirror of fear, of failure, of the questions we still cannot answer. Together, they form a map of America's hidden wounds. The Zodiac, taunting with ciphers, showed us how terror could be written into culture. The Black Dahlia, revealed how a single life, cut short with surgical cruelty, could turn a city's ambition into dread. The Tylenol murders transformed the way a nation trusted its medicine, reminding us that even the familiar can be weaponized. JonBenet's death made every household wonder whether safety is ever certain, even behind locked doors. And the Austin yogurt shop killings proved that innocence can be stolen in the most ordinary of places. These cases endure not just because they remain unsolved, but because they changed us. They redrew the boundary between public and private, between ordinary and monstrous. They remind us how fragile truth is, how easily evidence can be lost, how silence can become permanent. And yet, they also reveal something else: the persistence of hope. Each year, investigators return to old files. Each anniversary, families light candles. Each documentary, each retelling, is an act of refusal. A refusal to let the darkness have the final word. Perhaps one day, DNA will align, or a forgotten witness will speak, and one of these tragedies will close. But until then, they remain as warnings and lessons. Warnings that justice delayed can feel like justice denied. Lessons that memory itself is a form of resistance. So I leave you with this question: is it the answers we seek, or is it the act of seeking that defines us? Because in chasing the shadows of these crimes, we are really chasing something deeper. The need to know that even when darkness lingers, we have not stopped searching for light.